Hello, I'm Andrew Gray, and this is a video reading of In Search of a Story. The man on his doorstep was as young as he'd sounded on the phone, with deer-in-the-headlights eyes and a nervous smile. "Hello, I'm Brad Torrance from the Crier," he said, and extended his hand. The kid looked a bit like an excited puppy. "Corey Wolf," he said, and they shook hands. Corey stepped back so Brad could enter and then closed the door. He motioned towards the living room and waited for Brad to take a seat, and then sat in his favorite leather chair. "This is a great room," Brad said, with a touch of awe in his voice. Then he sat and waited. Corey got the impression he was waiting for something. You wanted to ask me some questions. I'm a little unsure why you'd want to interview me, but I'm here to help." "I probably should have been clear. I was hoping to interview both you and your wife." Corey smiled. "Nope, it's just me, no wife." That simple statement sent a stab through his stomach. "I'm so sorry," Brad said. "Wait, let's back up. There never has been a wife. I think we have a misunderstanding of some kind. I'm not married and never have been," Corey clarified. Brad became jittery, and for a second, Corey thought he might hyperventilate. "But the ad..." "Yes, like I said, I never had a wife, but I was getting ready to have a baby. I had a partner a few years ago, but he wasn't interested in children, though I was. That and, well, other things doomed the relationship." Brad smiled and opened the notebook he brought, apparently distinctly more relaxed. "Aren't you supposed to ask me questions?" "I can," Brad said. "Your ad caught my attention and I thought there was a story behind it. I'll admit that I was expecting to do a story about mothers recovering after grief from the loss of a child. My mother lost 3 babies after me." Corey nodded thoughtfully and then stood up. "Come on," he said, and Brad stood up. He led him up the stairs, and at the small landing, he opened the door and turned on the light. He hated entering this room now. Brad stepped inside, but Corey remained in the hallway, physically unable to enter. This was to be Adam's room. I picked out the furniture, painted the walls. I spent days picking out just the right color blue. Then I asked a friend to paint the teddy bears on the walls, and we even added stars to the ceiling. Corey didn't look up, unable to take any more. He stepped away from the door and waited for Brad to come out of the room. Then Corey turned off the bedroom light and closed the door. Without saying any more, he led the way back down the stairs and into the living room, where he once again sat in his chair. Mothers aren't the only ones to feel grief. "What happened?" Corey wasn't sure why he opened up, but he did. "About a year ago, I found that my best friend, Eileen, was pregnant. She wasn't married and was barely able to take care of herself. Eileen was wonderful, but there wasn't a maternal bone in her body. She decided that she wanted to put up the baby for adoption and asked if I would adopt the child." Corey's voice broke and he yanked a tissue from the box on the lower shelf of the end table. He never thought he'd keep tissues in various rooms of the house, but for months he'd needed them. Eileen was thrilled. She would get to be a part of the baby's life, and that was all she wanted. "You said his name was Adam." "After we found out she was having a boy, I came up with a name and Eileen liked it. So we started referring to him as Adam. I bought the nursery things and fixed up the room upstairs. Everything was ready." Corey paused and blew out his breath. He needed to get himself under control. What he wasn't prepared for, was for Brad to reach over and touch his hand. Corey hadn't been touched in quite a while, and he liked it. The gesture was probably a breach of journalistic integrity and objectivity, or something like that. But it was what he desperately needed. "Please take your time. I'll listen." Corey thought he might have seen tears in Brad's eyes, but it was hard to tell through his own. "Eileen was about 8 months pregnant, and she was at home. I hadn't heard from her that day, so I stopped by after work. I found her on the kitchen floor where she'd fallen." Corey figured he might as well finish the story and get it over with. The autopsy showed that she had a blood vessel in her brain that burst. It was probably a defect she'd had since birth. They said she died pretty quickly. Brad had taken notes through his story, and Corey waited for him to finish. "Did you get any help with the grief, I mean?" "Some. I actually found a group of people who had lost children in Harrisburg. 11 women and me. The thing was, at the time, I didn't consider my grief as bad as theirs. I wasn't the one who carried the child, but..."
I'm back.
You still lost a child just the same, Brad said. Corey nodded. He does understand.